Yeah. What's up, you heathens and demons? I didn't switch my screen. What is up, you heathens and demons, you beautiful, blasphemous people? Welcome back to A Seeing Red. I'm your boy, Nakasuchi. What's up, Ali? I think you're muted, Ali, or do I have everybody muted?
Nope, I'm dumb and I forgot to click button. Durr. Everything's all kinds of fun tonight. So, hey guys, Knock wanted to do a special open room tonight. We're going to be talking about the definition of a reprobate as viewed by Calvinists, who originally coined the term, versus the NIFBs versus the way that it's kind of modernly used. And then we're going to get into an in-depth discussion on whether or not atheists want to take away fundamental religious rights for Christians and whether or not Christians want to take away human rights for the rest of us, because I think that there's a distinct difference between the way that we even use those terms. So having a discussion is going to be fun. I do want to give a quick preface, though, because midway through the stream, at around 7 p.m. PST, 10 p.m. EST, my alarm is going to go off. I'm dealing with a herniated disc. I let you guys kind of know that I thought that I had sprained my back. I got an official diagnosis with more tests on Monday. So I am doing PT right now, and that alarm's going to go off, and I'm going to have to turn my camera off to go do these stretches that I'm supposed to do to help realign my spine, because one of my discs is jutting out into the muscle on the right-hand side after my fall from 2 weeks ago. So I have to do that. It's going to be annoying. Y'all are going to hear it. I'm sorry. I'll try to catch the mic before it happens, but if not, and you guys hear the alarm go off, I have to do what I need to do to take care of myself.
They've been acclimated to that from listening to me for so long, go live, and my phone going off every single time. So
yeah, it's not a raging atheist stream unless somebody's phone goes off, and tonight it's gonna be mine, even though mine is always on silent.
I think the audience is well acclimated. We have 2 guests already. That leaves us 2 spots open. So if anybody wants to join, feel free. If you do so, I'll be busy for 20 minutes fixing the screen, but I would love to do that because we it's an open rooms, but we 2 spots left because we're using StreamYard.
Because Zoom is being a dick. It's not collaborating with OBS worth of shit. That's when we can have the bigger rooms.
I'm gonna actually go back to the paid StreamYard probably in a couple weeks because Zoom is just. We decided to go with Zoom, and then a month later, not even a month later,
something broke. I think it's the encryption. I think because they're starting to encrypt their stuff, like OBS just can't capture it. I'm currently in dialogue with the OBS team. Like, I've been talking with them about like the incompatibility, so they're looking into it. So at some point, because I have the paid subscription to Zoom, I'm the one who shelled the shit out for that. So I'm the one who's mad because I've been using it for Sticks and Stonehenge, and part of the reason we haven't been streaming is because we can't use it, and like I don't have the paid features for freaking StreamYards, and sometimes StreamYard doesn't like interacting with OBS either. So like I don't know, I don't freaking know. We're gonna get back to that soon. For those of you who have missed out on SNS, our next stream is gonna be fun. Callan's been going through some personal stuff, so she's been kind of unavailable, and I've been dealing with my back issues, so we're gonna be bringing those streams back pretty soon.
Do you have Discord open?
I do.
Send Will Kincaid a link. So I'll be messing with the screen. So before I start messing with the screen, when Will comes up in here, is going to mess everything up, and we'll let our guests introduce themselves. I have just a couple announcements. At some point, if we can ever get our time straight, I'm going to be going on Guzman's channel to catch up with the many in IFB. It's been a long time. He's too young to have on this channel. But he's reached out to me. He wants to have a debate on evolution, and I said yes because it would be a good time to really check in and see how he's doing since I haven't heard from him, and catch up with him. So hopefully that'll be happening, and if that does happen, I'll probably mirror it on my channel. Patreon poll is tied, so I'm going to ask the chat later on. It's probably at the end of this stream. I'm going to leave it up to the chat. So if you're interested in having an influence...
Do you need me to type... I was about to say, do you need me to tie break?
I decided to let the chat do it. So if you want to have an influence over the direction, I'm going to take some of the edited content. The poll is what other religion should I start covering first? On Patreon, it's tied between Hinduism and Scientology. So those are your 2 choices. We'll do that later on in the stream. So if you want to be a part of that, we'll do that later.
I'm the air quotes around religion are for Scientology, by the way, not for Hinduism, because we covered Hindutva over on Sticks and Stonehenge not too long ago.
I think Callan in the chat would want us to start tackling some Hinduism, because she's been talking about Hinduism quite a bit lately.
Yeah, she's been really worried about the Hindutva movement, especially because, like, Hindutva is actually, like, there's a bunch of people in that movement who have been starting to make moves in the U.S. Like, there's over 50,000 of them here, and they've also been donating money to political candidates, including some Democrats. So, like, there's some fuckery going on with that.
I've even had, like, real-life friends ask me, like, why don't you ever cover anything besides Christianity? It's like, you know, they're Christians, so of course they would ask me that. But it's a good question, and it's something that I've planned on doing for a while. And so we're gonna start doing it soon.
So should I put out my big announcement, or should we leave it as a surprise for the patrons when the first stuff gets put up?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
All right, so for those of you guys who like my snarky ass when we do our Sunday streams, Nock is thinking about trying to get some extra hours in at his job, and that means that he's going to have a little bit less time for edited content. So I'm going to be filming a few response videos of my own to various Christian channels and to some fluffy bunny pagan channels that I'm really not happy with the woo that they're peddling. Like, I'm very, very anti-woo. Everybody on SNS is, and I'm going to be putting those up because they're fairly easy to edit, and I think that it'll be fun. So you guys are going to get to see my perspective on a bunch of stuff, especially woo nutrition, because that's kind of like my bailiwick. Like, that's the thing that I'm interested in, and any sort of like woo crazy beliefs, like, oh, you know, the Greeks had orgies all the time. No, that was the Romans, first off, and it wasn't all the time. So, you know, that kind of stuff. I'm going to be doing that. And also, Nock and I, before this episode, like before we got this going, filmed the very first episode of Film Crusade. So I'm going to be working on editing that and getting the next script for the second episode done. So that series is going to launch pretty soon. And we're going to be rolling out a whole new set of Patreon rewards for our upper tiers. So our $10 and $20 Patreons. We're going to be rolling out some extra benefits for y'all related to Film Crusade, including potentially exclusive merch and stuff like that. So if you guys are interested in that series, where we're going to be tackling Christian themes and non-Christian media and kind of how they're harmful and how that can fuck with your brain and bring out latent Christianity, like, that stuff's coming down the road. We've got the footage now, so things are progressing.
All right, so we got Will should be coming in. When Will's here, let me know so I can. When Will's here, get him in so I can reset.
Yeah, he just shot me messages. He's wrapping up on another channel, so it might be a bit before he comes in.
So when he's here, when he comes in, I'll have to redo the screen. And then Shay is our last spot. Shay hasn't been on the channel in quite a while, and she is saying when she gets out of work in 20 minutes, she's going to try to come on. So we're going to save that last spot for Shay. So we can go ahead and introduce our guest, Allie, and get the show rolling. If anybody, you know, we have a couple topics, but as I told both Mr. Parker, I know you by Godless, and Demolished Doctrine, our boy Richard Madsen, if they have anything else that they want to talk about. I actually have like 2.5 hours tonight. I'm going to probably stay up to about 11:30ish, so we have a little bit of extra time. We can go a little bit long.
All right, so Mr. Parker, welcome back. You want to give a quick introduction and kind of talk about what you were interested, like why you were interested in coming on tonight?
So I'm Mr. Parker. I just go by that name. Pretty laid back dude. I'm interested in this because I'm trying to get involved into biblical understanding, like some doctrines and all that fun stuff, and look into the sects and like all the certain parts of Christianity. And so discussing this, I thought it would be cool, and I got some free time to do.
Sweet. And Demolished Doctrine, also known as Richard Madsen, our crazy Christian, resident crazy Christian, who all the other Christians like to go after. And I say that with all of the love in my heart. Of course, you know, I have the utmost respect for you and our, you know, conversations, even if we have gotten into the weeds a couple of times on your neurology stuff. Welcome back. And what brought you to be interested in talking about this particular topic tonight? We haven't had you around in a while.
Peace and respect to you all. Yeah, I tell you what, it just gets on my every last nerve what Christians say about their own religion. So this is one of those topics where I think they disagree with their own text, and I think it deserves a little review.
All right, we got Will Kincaid in the house.
I actually reached out to Richard earlier today because after the whole Misha Popoff thing, Ali, I just really wanted a Christian on. that I could talk to and not want to just bash my head into the fucking wall. So Will's here.
So
we'll let him introduce, and I'm gonna fix the stream. So.
All right. Also, by the way, guys, my partner got me something special. I don't know if you can read that, but like on the subject of what Richard was saying, it says I don't see that.
Sorry. Now when Will came in, everything's messed up. So you might want to wait till I reset everything.
Right.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. All right.
Will's fucking up everything.
All right, so we have our redeemed troll in the house tonight, but former harasser, now friend of the channel. Welcome back, Will. What brings you here tonight?
Our harasser is a very strong word, but I'll take my lumps, I suppose. I did pull lots of nonsense. I'm in the neighborhood for a good conversation at this point. I'm hung up with real life shit, and I just got off a podcast where I wasn't allowed to swear, so I'm really feeling the liberal vibe here. I'm enjoying it. But how much does Knock need for this StreamYard's premium nonsense? Because I'll just give him the money now. I don't care.
I've never even looked at it.
It's like it's 100. It's like 100 a month, I think, it's 20 a month, I think.
It's 100 what?
That's insane.
It's like 100 for a year or 20 a month is what I'm seeing here. Annually, let's see if it's monthly versus annually. Yeah, annually it's $120 for a year's worth or $20 a month.
I'm getting like every other word.
Now, I don't know if that's on your end. Knock, am I coming through clearly for you?
I heard her perfectly. So
yeah, that's probably coming out on
bizarre.
your end.
We're gonna do Richard. I'm like setting up the screen as we're talking.
Yeah,
so,
Knock is cleaning shit up.
There we go. Who did I do first? Thought I did Will. Will dipped out. So we'll be coming back. Take over, Ali, as I do all this shit.
So, as Knock is arranging, what sort of inspired is friend of the channel, Ocean Keltoy, also friend of our channel over at Sticks and Stonehenge, did a video recently on what he calls escaping the Christian hell, and he talked a little bit about the definition of reprobate from Calvinists, sort of this idea of people who were created to be damned. Like, basically, God created them specifically to go to hell, to inspire the people that he wanted to choose. Calvinism is complicated. The people that he knew would choose him to inspire them and scare them. Like, that's kind of what they're created for. They are created to be damned. Versus, like, the kind of general definition of the term, which is somebody who is, like a scoundrel or something like that. Somebody who is what you would consider to be significantly less, I guess, like, it's a lot less threatening sounding than the Calvinism thing. Like, oh, your soul was literally created to go to hell. And then you have the NIFB definition, which I pulled up a Matt Slick article for that in order to be able to read off the definition of reprobate mind. And that is sort of these people who are damned to hell because they've turned away from God. And, the specific actions basically make you unredeemable. Like, particularly being gay is kind of the big thing. But there's a number of other sins that they think are completely unredeemable. And basically, Christ's blood apparently isn't strong enough to clean you up if you engage in that shit. So, there ain't nothing that can wash the sins out of your soul if you sleep with a man, I guess. So, like, that's kind of where, like, Knock was like, hey, this is kind of an interesting conversation. Let's bring a few people on who might have some diverse opinions on it and kind of, like, discuss this, because we're used to this really... Oh, welcome back, Will. We're used to this really, like, intense version of... Oops, we've got echoes coming from Will now.
Jesus.
Will fucking everything up.
We're used to this really intense version of the term reprobate that's kind of used the way that I just described by the NIFB, and sometimes we can jokingly use it with each other, but the original use, the Calvinist use, has practically fallen out of favor. And so kind of coming back to that and having a discussion of where it's gone and where some of these theories seem to come from, I thought would be really enlightening.
Yeah.
And so did Knock, apparently.
Yeah, so what I did is I just I'm doing a display share until Shay gets in, and then I'll fix the screens, and hopefully we won't have any issues. But it was just like when Will left, it was like fuck, everything I just did just got fucking obliterated. Thank you, Will Kincaid.
Take 3.
So, the good thing about a Raging Atheist is you see the behind the scenes as it happens. I don't know how other people handle that shit, but I have to handle it a certain way because I'm stupid. But yeah, I was watching an Ocean's video earlier because I finally had a free moment to catch a few of my friends' videos, and I realized like by not having them on this channel that I wasn't seeing them. So I actually resubscribed to all of my friends' channels here on A Raging Atheist today. In fact, I think I resubscribed to you, Richard, but if I didn't, I will. And I'm like, ooh, I can watch a few videos. I'm taking a break from cleaning the house, and Ocean had this really, really good response. It's probably like the first response video I ever seen Ocean do against William Lane Craig. But there was just one part of that video that just really like slapped me. Because I never really even heard of it before, and it was the Calvinist definition of what a reprobate is, and that is a person born to go to hell, created to go to hell. And, I have been called a reprobate. Here, I'll turn on my camera. I'm wearing my shirt tonight, specially for this. Dr. Josh, or actually Megan from Digital Hammurabi designed this, and Dr. Josh made it all happen for this first T-shirt. But it's, we use it in the definition that's humorous, like a rogue, like a rascal, like just somebody that's unreputable, and it's used in a humorous way, usually an affectionate way. You're just talking shit about somebody, and that's how we're using it. Like I'm embracing what the NIFB call me, but the NIFB use it in a way of a reprobate mind, like you're not born reprobate, like the Calvinists seem to think. And I've just been called a reprobate so much, like it just really slapped me, and I was like, let's, we're gonna have an open room anyway. This would be a perfect just beginning of a conversation, so I thought it would be an interesting one.
All right, so take 2 on Will's introduction. Will, welcome back to the channel. What brought you on to have a conversation with us about this?
Because
I'm a reprobate. I'm
You're cutting in and out with your audio.
So?
Like you might need to get closer to your mic.
Yeah. Well, I took it away because it was like echoing or something. I thought you said so.
Well, no, my audio was echoing for a second, but like now your audio had cut out. Now I can hear you clearly.
Yeah,
so
now
go ahead
you're
and
good.
repeat yourself.
What's up, Will?
Yeah. Very good. Hi. How are you?
I am sane today.
I'm in pain,
feel it.
but that's because I just got back from PT. So.
I'm in existential pain. I don't know if that counts.
All right, so who wants
Wow,
to start? Like I'm sure both Will and Richard have lots to say on the topic. So whichever one of you wants to start off our kind of discussion, like unmute yourself or wave at me or something. That way we can kind of kick things off, because I know that Richard, this is something that you're fairly passionate about.
Yeah, I don't know where Christians, even reading their own text, get these ideas from. Jesus, I never said that. I never said that. Yeah, it's actually pretty apropos. I mean, there are necessary logical conclusions from within the text, and then there's a lot of stuff that Christians profess it's just extrapolation. It's just dogmatic view of it. There's nothing in the text about it. And this is one of those things. And I'd like to first point out that within their text, the only, and it identifies it as such, unforgivable sin is blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. That is denial of the existence of God in heaven. That's it. Everything else falls under grace. So if you're ever told by a Christian you're damned for ABC, well, I'd challenge him on that.
Yeah, like I embraced it because that was always my understanding is, I've had streams where I denounce God. We lost Will again. Thank you, Will. I've had streams where I have denounced God. And by that definition, I would fit what I always understood a reprobate to be. Now, my understanding was pretty much the Baptist understanding, and it's pretty much, it's kind of what the NIFB says. The Baptists say, like, if you make poor decisions in your life, then you're obviously a reprobate of a reprobate mind. Let me fix the screen. My OCD is gonna kill me. There we go.
Oh, that's much better.
So, it's if you make bad decisions repeatedly, if you're a sinner and you know you're sinning as you do it and you continue to do it, well, eventually God would give up on you and turn you over to a reprobate mind. And it kind of blew me away when I heard Ocean's statement, because that's a completely different conversation when you're talking about reprobate, if you're coming from the Calvinist definition. And when I actually typed in, because it interested me, so I stopped Ocean's video and I typed into Google, what is the definition of a reprobate? And I got those two definitions. I got the one that's, a humorous, affectionate term that you would have for like a buddy just talking smack. And then the other was a Calvinist definition. And it wasn't what the Baptist said. So I actually literally had to go onto YouTube and find some Baptists talking about reprobate mind and shit, just to remind me, like, all the things that I've ever heard or that they have said about me. So it's a whole nother conversation. And almost worse, I think, when you're talking about people that's God is intentionally creating them, I guess, to be bad, to be vile, to lead people away from God. These people are automatically destined to go to hell from the moment that they're born. I mean, that suggests a whole new problem of evil to me, on a new, like, just a universal aspect that's way beyond the problem of evil as it is.
As much as it's let's double dip in the Ocean Kelto pool, like that, his God go to hell video, God's the one who deserves to go to hell video is,
it was brilliant.
Yeah, that kind of covers that. By the way, Will just messaged me. He's dealing with tech gremlins. They've infested his computer. He's been hanging around us for too long. He's trying to get it sorted out. So as soon as he gets it fixed,
So when Will and Shay gets in, then I'll do the individual screens again and set up my screen again. Real quick, Kit Hovind CPA. I got your text message, but I was super busy and then I forgot to text you back. Congratulations, 50 years. My Lions will never do it. Super Bowl champions. You guys played a hell of a game. I thought you were out of it for a minute, so good job, and I'm proud of you. I'm glad for you, because I can only imagine the feeling being a Detroit Lions fan. Asshole.
Well, so Mr. Parker, do you have anything that you want to add to kind of just the intro part of the conversation? Like, what has been your understanding of the term?
So my understanding is mostly based off what the NFIB has been saying online, basically, and that's the entire idea, like, oh, if you're like so sinful, God will eventually turn you over. And that's like kind of like screws with me. It's like God's supposed to be this great person, yet he gives you up, and it's not so loving. It's like, that doesn't put God in a good view much.
Yeah, and I was just watching a video. I can't remember who it was by. I wish I could remember who it was by. It might have even been the Ocean video, and it might have been the William Craig. I think it was. I think it was the Ocean video earlier, where William Lane Craig was like, literally God just paying attention to every single person and what they're doing, and it broke it down, and it was like, so yeah, like God is individually, on an individual basis, with what the 8 billion people that's on this planet, looking at them and pretty much deciding their life. And the argument, like one of the main arguments was, well, if God puts you in a place where you can't receive Christ, where you can't, where you just never heard of him, that God intentionally put you there, and thus it's justified that you would be going to hell, because the only way to get to heaven is through Christ. And I mean, it was just blew me the fuck away. Like, I'm watching this. I mean, Ocean always does great work, but I mean, when he goes at Christians, I think he's one of the best, because he just really tore apart William Lane Craig. And William Lane Craig's video is like, fuck, I wish I would have covered this one,
So, since we've kind of gotten a little bit into the definition of reprobate from a Calvinist sense, I'm going to read a portion of Matt Slick's article and then take issue with one of his translations, because I think that he's oversimplifying Greek, and you know me, when people start fucking with ancient Greek, I'm going to take a stand against that.
Matt Slick is Calvinist, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I'm pretty
but
sure
he tends to agree more with he tends to agree more with the NIFB, it seems, in his article. He says, a reprobate mind is a mind that is given over to sinful passions and ungodly desires. It's another way of describing a person who is set on satisfying the flesh and not the Spirit of God. It is a person who rejects God and does what is self-serving instead of what God desires. Therefore, someone who is reprobate under the condemnation of God. Such a person does not attend church, does not care about the things of God, does not read the word, and does not pray. They are judged by God and under condemnation, so they have no conviction of their sin or desire for God. The term reprobate mind is found in the King James Version in Romans 1:28 and is rendered differently in different translations. Gives a bunch of different translations. And then he says the Greek word reprobate, depraved, is adokimos, which means unapproved, unworthy, spurious, worthless, in a past, in a sense, meaning disapproved, rejected, cast away, pertaining or not in accordance to what is right, not fitting, not what should be done, bad. The problem is adokimos, when you're talking about it being used for the Bible, it's used that way, but it's actually a bit more complex than that, like most Greek words. It means, it actually comes from Euripides, and Plato, talking about things like items like metal and such that don't stand up to the test. And so, like, in the New Testament, it is then used in a metaphorical sense to apply to people who, despite having accepted the word of God, don't stand up to the test of the flesh, basically. So his definition that Christians can't be of reprobate mind doesn't stand up to the way that that word is actually used.
Well, yeah, and Christians succumb to the flesh all the time. Like, we see it splashed all over the news. Like, it seems like the more vocal they are about whatever issue is what they do. You know, you'll hear about Ted Haggart after spending years of espousing homophobia has some issues there, and after, you know, other pastors, you know, they'll spew about abortion, and then you'll find out that, well, you know, they had a mistress and, you know, she had an abortion or two. You know, I used to hear about it all the time down in North Carolina, especially, it seemed, in the really crazy Baptist environment. It was, I seen it happening. It was crazy. So it's like, you know, it's the same thing that Matt Powell says. It's this once saved, always saved. If you're a true Christian, you act a certain way and you will come to these natural conclusions that the NIFB has because their way is this way. And you know, the regular Baptists have a much broader definition to where, like, the NIFB really focuses, and we've had them here on this channel. His handle is Soldier for Christ. One of the Aarons that came on that was NIFB literally said that pretty much reprobates are sodomites, which would be, you know, LGBTQ plus people. So they really focus specifically
people that the NIFB would identify as male that are attracted to other people that they would identify as male. Because remember, you know, that they don't really cover lesbians all that much. They occasionally talk about them, but like they specifically have an issue with people they identify as male, including trans women who they would identify as male, even though trans women are women. You know, who like have attractions to one another.
Oh yeah, and I even got Matt to go there. I don't think it was on camera, but off. But yeah, I think he admitted off camera that he doesn't really so much have a problem with the girls because, you know, he understands that. Which is, you know, some of the same justifications that I used back in my homophobia. It actually took me back to my homophobia because I would use those same justifications, you know, because I didn't have much of an issue with lesbianism. Shit, I watch those, you know, I watch that porn all the time, you know. But,
well, because it's rooted in fear and disgust, really, for a lot of guys.
Yeah,
like there's this emasculation, like some part of you being in the presence of somebody who may be attracted to you is somehow lost because somebody is attracted to you. It's that fear. You know, what if I feel that attraction back? What if I feel any of those feelings? Does that mean, you know, am I less if I'm not straight? You know, and I think people don't think about it that directly, I don't think, but I think that that's what it's rooted in, or that's what it seems to be, because otherwise, why would you be threatened by a trans woman? Why would you be threatened by being attracted to a trans woman? Because, like, if she's a woman and you're attracted to her and you're attracted to women, then very clearly you're still attracted to women. You perceived her as a woman, right? Like, just because at one point she may or may not have had a penis doesn't mean that you didn't perceive her and become attracted to her as a woman. Why would that be emasculating?
Well, yeah, and like with the NIFB especially, like, I don't even think that Matt or the NIFB truly considers me to be a reprobate. Like Matt trolls me and calls me reprobate, but I'm not a gay man. So and not only Matt, but as I've stated,
But I mean, under
openly,
the
all of Matt's
the other
family,
definition.
all of Matt's family tried to convert me back to Christianity. You wouldn't do that with a reprobate, somebody that God just gave up on. You wouldn't even think that I'd have a chance, so why would you try to convert me? So they don't really think that I'm a reprobate. They just troll me with that because they pretty much, I mean, as Aaron said in that conversation, it's pretty much reserved for gay people. And as Allie's pointing out, it's gay men.
So, quick shout out to the chat. We got 30 people in the house and only 7 likes. Y'all would need to work a little bit harder for the algorithm. Please give us some love. We're trying to expand out the channel. YouTube is working its ass off to demonetize every single thing that we do. We're again talking about gay people and gay issues, so this is going to get demonetized anyway. I don't give a shit about swearing. I don't care if anybody else does.
All the live
Just don't
streams
break the rest of our rules, because I have that mute button and I'm not afraid to use it. But yeah, if you guys get a chance, please pop down there. Even if you hit the dislike button, it still feeds the algorithm. That's going to help us out a lot. Especially because we're rolling out all this new edited content. Like, we're going to work hard to keep the monetization on some things, and bumping up these live streams is going to help a lot with channel growth.
Well, yeah, and you know, the live streams are what they are. And you know, I like the format of it. And you know, the whole reprobate conversation it's only a LGBTQ conversation because NIFBs make it so. And as I said, as bad as that is, I find the Calvinism definition to be far worse, because God is literally creating people from the moment of birth that he's gonna cast into hell no matter what they do. You know, like, to me, that is a monstrous God beyond anything that I've ever said on this channel. And it just, like, I had never even really considered, like, of course you consider that, like, when it comes to, you know, what about people that never had the chance to hear Christ or be introduced to Christ, but you never think about it.
The answer is it was done on purpose.
Yeah, like, you never think about it. I never really thought about it along the terms like Yahweh was doing it on purpose. Like you know, like, you still, like, this latent Christianity that we always talk about. I had that latent Christianity that I wasn't thinking, like, no, he's just, by every definition, this is just monstrous. And if you really think this, then God, like, why would you follow this thing?
So Spartan theology claims it's not no matter what they do, but the thing is according to Calvinism, it is. There is no choice whatsoever for these reprobate people to be able to repent. They've been created specifically to go to hell.
Yeah, again, I'll read the definition. It's in the Calvinism definition, what popped up on my computer when I typed in, what is a reprobate, is a sinner who is not of the elect and predestined to damnation. That's predetermined.
Predestination means y'all don't get a choice.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't, it's not just that they never will accept Christ, it's that they were created to never accept Christ. Like, that's some fucked up stuff. So I'm going to let our 2 guests kind of expound on that a little bit. I've got my own opinions on it. Being a pagan, I've got a very different viewpoint on a lot of these things than most people do. But, like, this idea of being created specifically for damnation, of free will not having anything to do with it. Like, I have some level of belief in predestination. I'm a Stoic. Anybody who's familiar with Stoicism, there's a level of predestination to that. There's a lot of things you can't control. Most of what you can control is your attitude about it, basically. Because, you know, chain of causation that leads to your existence, chain of causation that leads to the existence of any of your choices. We can get into that later, but I'm really curious, especially Richard Madsen and Mr. Parker, what you guys think about this particular definition and about the NIFBs, and kind of, like, the NIFBs claims there's a little more freedom in it, even though it's still sort of a mind fuck, because you're talking about, you know, sexual urges, which are inbuilt. Like, as far as we can tell, those you can't control at all. You know, but, like, I'm curious. Go ahead, Richard. Like, I'm going to stop rambling. I'm going to let you talk.
I'd like to let Mr. Parker go first this time, so I'm not being selfish.
All right, go on.
One of my mic just died. Hold on, I gotta plug this in. You can talk, Richard.
Well, the first thing I'd say about it, Ashley, is according to their own text, there's supposed to be a quote. You know, if this is if they're serious about the text, there's supposed to be a quote in there that reads, quoting God, "I would or will, or it is my will that all be saved." Well, I think this immediately defeats their assertion, but I can see why they're making that statement that way. They're referring to other part of the text that says only an elect will be walking that narrow path. I mean, I get why they're saying it, you know? But
well, what's interesting, though, is that that's actually in one of Paul's letters. It says, "This is good and pleases God the Savior, that all be saved and come to a knowledge of the truth." So that's Paul saying that, not Jesus and not the Old Testament, which, Knock just did a video on why Paul might be a problem. So this is definitely Paul's doctrine within the Bible. All of it has
value or none of it has value. Either it's one work or throw it away. That's my stance.
Yeah, well, if we get to it, there's a quick topic that we could try to tackle at the very end. Is Paul a true apostle? And if he wasn't, would it delegitimize the New Testament itself? I am still deep in the research. I am looking at the history of it now. I have been fairly vindicated because a conversation with Paulo Gia has really propelled me to continue with this research. So, but that's beyond the point. What I like about you, Richard, is you have very different interpretation, of course, than most Christians. I'm sure that your Christian God doesn't create people to go to hell. He's hoping that at least that they will come to Christ, I'm sure.
I think the confusion lies when the individual reader reads it as if they are the hero of the story. Like, you get Mormons who say, "Oh, I'm going to be a god over an earth." That doesn't make sense. It totally makes sense for the hero of the story to make a claim like that.
Well, remember, Richard, though, that Mormons have an expansion pack that they added onto the Bible, courtesy of their founders. So, they're kind of a special
I'm just referring
case
to the Bible
there.
in that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, they don't use the Bible to make that claim, though. They use the Book of Mormon to make that claim.
No, they use the Bible to make that claim. I mean, they support it in other ways. I'm not disagreeing with you, okay? But if you were to read all the promises directly to the reader of the text, you would think you could think something like that. And yes, Pearl of Great Price, etc., confirms it further. And that's apparently the way the founder of the church, Mr. Smith or Jones or whatever name he made up, that's the way he read it. So that's what he was claiming. But I've argued, and I will argue, that demands and encouragements and privileges and instruction are for the capable, not for the incapable. And ask your average religious practitioner, any religion, I think, if they will ever perfect their religion. I think they're going to say no. In the case of Christians, ask them if they will fulfill the role of Christ. They'll say, or at least they should say no. And if that's the case, then the instructions, the encouragements, the promises, other than the general ones to the general populace, were never made to those readers. So I think they're making huge assumptions in who gets damned and who does not, and exactly what that means to the reader.
Well, I think that Christianity is a bit confusing because I've talked repeatedly, and I'm going to do a video for this channel as well as for SNS. I'm probably going to upload it to both, where I talk about the difference between an orthopraxic and an orthodoxic religion, because Christianity is at its core, if you take the words of Jesus and not just the words of Paul, it's an orthodoxic religion. It's about what you believe, not what you do. Now, they claim that God's going to make you want to do certain things because of your belief, and that the Spirit of God in you is going to move you, and da-da-da-da-da. And so, you can kind of make an argument that it's trying to be both, but at its core, the works versus salvation debate is about, is it orthodoxic or is it orthopraxic? And most of these churches come on the sides of it's orthodoxic. It's not about what you do, it's about what you believe, and what you believe is going to influence what you do. Versus, say, my religion, which is orthopraxic. Am I a Hellenist? Did I worship my gods? Did I do my rituals? Do I believe in them? The way that I believe in them, I can get into a fight with a Platonist right now, and we can still both be Hellenists, because what we believe about the gods isn't as important as the act of worship itself and the way that it is done. And so Christianity, I think, comes into this like frustration with itself, because you're talking about an orthopraxic religion that has, or an orthodoxic religion that has orthopraxic elements that appear to be tacked on in some ways, or claim to be brought about by the orthodoxicness, and you have people who want to define it so firmly by orthopraxic. And hey, Emmett, welcome to the chat. Congratulations on your engagement.
Congratulations, Emmett.
Yep, Emmett and Raz are engaged now.
Since you cut yourself off, just real quick, Tioga asked if I was raised a Christian. I was raised Southern Baptist, but I've always maintained like we weren't really that religious. A lot of the people around us were. My dad grew much more religious, and I would say fundamental now that he's been down in North Carolina for 30 years, however long it's been. My family up here is actually a lot more religious now than when I was growing up as well. But yes, I was raised a Christian. I believed in the Christian God. I believed in Jesus, but I still smoked weed and drank and cursed and was having sex. So.
Well, and I was also, like, to answer your question, I was also raised, like, much more fundy, actually, than Naka was. Like, we were the go to church every single Sunday, and thank the gods. Like, I went to the pastor's house, and I got extra education for, like, baptism and other stuff, because I started having doubts when I was in, 8, 9, 10, 11, started getting into, evolution and stuff like that, like learning about paleontology in particular. I got very fascinated with stuff like pelycosaurs and things like that. That was my initial major before I swapped it to nutrition. And so, like, I got special classes at, like, his place where we'd watch videos and, like, study the Bible, and they, like, really tried to indoctrinate me. And then I found out that, like, women weren't even allowed to be missionaries under my particular branch of Christianity that I grew up with. So I was just like, fuck this noise. I'll go find something that's better, because, like, I can't even make an impact in my faith.
Yeah, I never really understood how women at least succumb to the biblical theology aspect of it. Like,
you're indoctrinated into it from birth, basically, and you don't get rebellious. Like, unfortunately, I come from a strong line of Native American women, so, like, we're all just pretty much like, fuck that noise.
Yeah,
right?
and it's always been like my highest criticism of Christianity. Sorry, Richard, but you know that you're not the type of Christian that I usually go after, and we have really interesting discussions. But my biggest criticism of Christianity, and it falls back on this whole reprobate conversation, is that it does tend to other people. And I was having this conversation with somebody at work, and I was trying to explain to them that with Christianity, it's like anything I say is fundamentally going against everything they've ever been told their entire life. So even if what I'm saying to them is truth, and you have this problem with politics a lot, that's why we're so divided, is because you're raised into it now. Well,
and you've also got the search engine bubbles that you can get stuck in too, like your Facebook buggers, your search engine bubbles. Like, we're getting catered into these domes where all we hear is our own echoes of ourselves and the straw men of the other side.
Yeah, and when you're raised into something, like, you watch the videos of the Westboro Baptist Church, or even some of the videos that Matt Powell will put up on his channel with the little children, saying these very derogatory slang words towards groups of people. When you're raised into it, I think it just makes it that much easier, of course, and we always speak about indoctrination, but little children doing it is really creepy. And the fact that we're going to be leading into a conversation, do atheists want to take away your religious freedoms? And most of us would tell you no. Like, we want you to have that freedom. We want you to have the freedom, and we want you to choose no, and we want to have our freedoms to call you a fucking douchebag, and that's the counterbalance of it, because I don't think the other side wants us to have that freedom to call them the fucking douchebag. So, like, we'll get into that conversation sooner or later, but, we can wrap up the reprobate one first.
Speaking about being in a bubble, I can't imagine more of a strong-shelled bubble than perhaps being of a tribe of raiders who think that they're better than every other tribe, and And based on that idea, they received their spiritual stories and read them to confirm that. And then that got adopted from what were the ancient Hebrews into Judaism and then into the Judaic religions as a whole, and accepted by scholarship as the correct way to read it. So, I mean, you talk about a prejudiced people from a small part of the world who didn't know folks. You got it, man. There it is.
Well, and this is one of the things we stress heavily when we start talking about paganism. Like, I got a question from Lisa, and I answered her in the chat, but I wanted to say it on the stream in case anybody else was curious. I am atheistic pagan. I believe that the gods are real. I don't give a shit if you believe the gods are real. Like, I really don't, because my relationship with them is entirely separate from anyone else, and I can't deign to know the will of the gods, but if they cared if everybody believed in them, then they would reveal themselves to everyone. Like, I don't think that the gods demand servitude from every single person the way that Christians think. In fact, I can believe that the Norse gods also exist and have that completely not fuck with my own theology. Like, my religion is radically different, and I'm working on a 101 series on the particular version of Hellenism that I practice. But, like, this Christian idea that, you know, there's this revelation that these people had that makes them special and unique, and that the creator God, who is almighty and has done more than every other god that has ever existed, you know, like, has bestowed this magic privilege on them, and that they can rape, slaughter, pillage, murder, everything in the name of supposedly saving a few people while destroying and decimating all of these cultures. It boggles my fucking mind. It really does.
Yeah. So like, when to close out on Reprobate and like, to kind of blend it into the next conversation. I was watching earlier today a Baptist preacher, and I know, Ali, you was referencing a Baptist preacher in your area that was saying, something different earlier as well. Mm-hmm. There are Baptist preachers out there that are really cautioning Baptists on labeling people as reprobates, and I seen a couple videos earlier of that, and I wanted to highlight that at least some Christians are looking at this in a very serious light. Now, I've embraced being called a reprobate, but it did lead NIFB members to send me death threats for a period of about 6 or 7 months, and not just me against my daughter. I think once you start tossing that label around, if you have some fucked up shit going on in your head, and you're literally being told that somebody is evil, that God has given up on them. There's crazy people in this world that are willing to do crazy things, and tossing that label around, you're really playing Russian roulette. So I am appreciative of preachers out there preaching against tossing this label around so freely, and I wanted to point that out before we left this conversation.
Well, I wanted to give Mr. Parker, because he said earlier that he was getting his stuff together. So do you want to jump in on this before we close out the reprobate section and start talking about rights? Because we started to edge into it, but I want to give you a chance to talk because you've been really quiet.
Real quick, somebody's saying they want a reprobate shirt now. We are going to get that back up on the store. We're trying to figure this whole t-shirt thing out.
Is my mic good? Because I'm using my laptop now.
You've got a little bit of hollowness to it, but we can hear you clearly.
All right. So my final point on that, I guess, would be how the NFIB would say reprobates are prideful people, even though many Matt Powell will proclaim he has pride in God or pride in his teaching of God, and you go and call out people like homosexual and says they're very prideful, Pride Month, and keep saying pride over and over in his videos. And even though he's very prideful in his own teachings, I would think that should apply to himself.
I agree wholeheartedly. I thought the same thing, because he is very prideful, and when you see him behind the scenes, especially when I saw him around his family, the way that he ordered things, like even when his dad was there, Matt was the boss. he takes a lot of pride, and you know, as much shit as I give him about his documentaries, he puts a lot of time into it and a lot of dedication. I've always given him credit for his work ethic. The dude spends a lot of time being hateful. But yeah, like it is a direct hypocrisy with Matt Powell himself, because I've met the dude and I've seen how he interacts, and he is very prideful. I said narcissistic. I've labeled him that many times to his face a couple times. So yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with what you just said. And there goes Will again. Will
he
didn't
says
say
that
a
he's
word.
working with. He says that he's working with StreamYard to try to resolve the issues that he's having.
Yeah,
So
he's been talking
them tech
to
gremlins.
he's been talking to pagans in my Discord server. So you know, it happens. Will, welcome to the club.
Yeah, like unfortunately, anybody who comes on this channel has a risk of it being invaded by tech gremlins. Like that's just a thing that happens.
And I just figured out, like, for these open rooms, we're just gonna do the screen like this because,
Fuck this noise.
It's much easier. So okay, we can get into our next little conversation, because Friendly Atheist came out with a blog not too long ago, and he put a video out. And Hemet is probably one of the atheists that I've always respected the most, and one of the atheists that I don't reflect very much of when I put this channel together. I've famously said that I pretty much molded myself after old school Dusty Smith. But Hemet is somebody that I've always watched, and I've always read The Friendly Atheist. He was one of the first atheists on YouTube that I ever watched. And he's a different type of atheist than me, and I really enjoy him. I think he's probably one of our best representatives. But he put out an article talking about how the survey came out, and white evangelical men, a good bit of them, I think it was like 60% of them, think that atheists want to take away their religious freedoms, and if we ever got power, that we would take away their religious freedoms. They also think that the Democratic Party, if they get power, I think 58% of white evangelical men think that they'll try to take away their religious freedoms, even though the majority of the Democratic Party itself is Christian. So I wanted to have a conversation about that, because there's numbers out there and data out there that indicate that that's just not true. In that same article,
especially survey data on atheists in particular show that atheists have no interest in stripping religious freedoms. However, I think that this is where transitioning into the different definitions of what we're talking about when we're talking about rights versus freedoms is really important, because when you're talking about, say freedom, it's a very nebulous term, right? There's two kinds of freedom. There's freedom of and freedom from. So exactly. Freedom of is the freedom to do, say, have, etc. Freedom from is the freedom from being restricted from doing those things. And so what I think is that when Christians are talking about their religious rights being restricted, a lot of them are talking about the, freedom that other groups have from being persecuted by them, so to speak. Whereas when atheists and polytheists, because we talk about religious freedom in the same way quite often, when we're talking about freedom, we're talking about freedom of, you have the freedom to practice your religion in your own home. I have freedom from you knocking on my door to tell me about it.
Exactly. And the survey was worded specifically. Do you want people to have the same rights, equal rights? So you're not going to lose rights. And it was the survey that Hemet referenced in his article worded it in that very specific way, and it came back like the results were just astounding. And it was like, I think 52% of white evangelical men wanted to limit our freedom. Atheist freedoms.
Let me pull up the study so we can reference it. That way we're not talking out our asses.
Well, I've got all the notes written down, so I should actually look at them. Let me look. So 60% of white evangelical Protestants believe atheists will take away their rights if given power. Only 32% of white evangelical Christians say the same of atheists. We see what Trump is doing, all that shit. So where am I at? So among atheists who said that they loathed Christian fundamentalists more than any other religious group, as I said, the wording was very specific.
Yeah, would strip away their rights
Yeah.
if given the chance.
65% said they were perfectly fine with those Christians having the same rights as everyone else. So, like, you have the right, as Ali said, to practice your religion in your home, to teach your children your religion in your home. But the moment that you take those rights and say go out on the streets preaching against homosexuality, you're actually taking more rights. You know, like I do what I do here in my home. I don't go out on the street saying you're a Christian, you need to shut the fuck up. You know, like I just don't do that. I wouldn't consider myself having the right to do that. It would be very rude, right? Like,
So here's specifically like word for word what the article says, which I just posted it in the chat, by the way, the Friendly Atheist article. And this is quoting another article from the Washington Post, which is it'll restrict you for ad block or like prescript the subscription. And then we're going to open up the floor for you guys in a second. Sorry that you're kind of sitting around, but we wanted to give all the background on the topic before we get into it. Writing for the Washington Post, Denison University professor Paul A. Jupe says that he recently conducted a study with East Illinois University professor Ryan P. Burge, showing how the majority of white evangelical Christians sincerely believe that atheists would strip away their rights if given the chance. Of those white evangelical Protestants, we found that 60% believe that atheists would not allow them First Amendment rights and liberties. More specifically, we asked whether they believed atheists would prevent them from being able to hold rallies, teach, speak freely, and run for public office. Similarly, 58% that Democrats believe that Democrats in Congress would not allow them to exercise these liberties if they were empowered. By contrast, 23% think Republicans in Congress would not respect their rights. However, in a separate poll Jupe conducted a few years ago, he can say with authority that those fears are completely unfounded. Respondents were asked whether their selected group should be allowed to give speeches in the community, teach public schools, run for public office, and other liberties. Americans are not particularly tolerant of groups that they dislike. Only 30% are willing to allow their disliked groups 3 or more such activities. But 65% of atheists and 53% of Democrats who listen Christian fundamentalists as their least liked group were willing to allow them to engage in 3 or more of these activities. That's a much higher projection with tolerance than the sample overall. What did white evangelicals say when atheists asked the same question? They would totally strip away our rights. 13% of white evangelical Protestants selected atheists as their least liked group. Of those, 32% are willing to extend 3 or more of these rights to atheists. In fact, when we looked at all religious groups, atheists and agnostics were the most likely to extend these rights to groups they least liked.
Yeah, and you know that's really what I wanted to talk about is just this notion that atheists are this thing that we're going to come after we want to end Christianity. You know, if you watch a lot of my videos, I think some atheists would say that I'm a bad representation sometimes because of all the ad hominem attacks. Like I get crazy, you know.
There's the alarm that I said would go off.
But truly, I wouldn't want to take away my aunt and uncle's rights to think they're crazy shit. You know, like I wouldn't want to change them. I love them. I wouldn't want to take away my dad's right to practice his Southern Baptism now, even though he never raised us that way before. You know, I wouldn't want to take away that from anybody. I would like it to be a better atmosphere to where I can approach them and actually have a conversation with them about it, you know, but that atmosphere isn't there. But the other side does seem to indicate, and I've spoken about this a lot on the channel, and we will let you guys jump in. But like it's a lot of studies show that atheists are the least liked demographic in America. Like we don't really have any open representation in Congress. I think we might have one congressperson now that is like an open atheist. Maybe. We are one of the most demonized demographics in this country, and yet we are one of the most free-thinking demographics in the country to where, no, we don't want to actually... There are extremists, of course. There's going to be some atheists that like, yeah, I hate Christianity so much, I want it to be just gone. But most of us don't really think that. Most of us don't really want that. Most of us actually believe in the ideals of America, especially if we lean towards the left. I think that we really are for equality and want people to do what they do. What would I do if I didn't have fundamentals to rage against? So, like, yeah, we'll open up to you guys and see what both of you think, because I know, Richard, you're a Christian. I think, Mr. Parker, you're still a Satanist, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it'd be good to get y'all's perspective.
First, I'd like to say excellent public reading, which is difficult there, Aliakai. That was excellent.
Yeah, you should have seen me.
That's hard to do,
earlier.
you know. It's hard to do
Yeah, we
that.
had so many takes.
Yeah. Well, that's typical for humans in front of a crowd, and they're aware of it. Um, Gosh, there's so much to break down about that. I'll let Mr. Parker go.
All right. So I see that, like, I don't know. It's really hard to describe how I think about this situation. Um, Seeing how a majority of the U.S. Is mostly made out of Christians, um, they of course feel attacked by any group that has some sort of power. Like Democrats, they feel threatened by them, even though many are Christians. Um, I it's not surprising entirely that they feel threatened. Um, America is very religious. It's very religious since we are very religious. That's a fact, and I think the fear of Democrats and non-religious people taking away their rights is somehow one of their biggest fears, other than like anything else. Somehow, concluding that like there's threats of attacks from other countries and like attacking other countries, they're a little bit more concerned about their religious freedom.
Yeah, I don't think it's helped either when you have a president that panders to him and says, "Oh, there was a war on Christmas, but now you guys can say Merry Christmas again." Like that whole persecution complex. As we said earlier, talking about indoctrination. If you're raised into that, it's really even hard to make you see that it doesn't exist.
Yeah, the idea of persecution is somehow strong among Americans, even though Christians are the most dominant religious group in America right now.
Yeah, that's another thing that I don't really, because we do talk about how atheism and agnosticism and even paganism is on the rise. Definitely demographically, there's no denying that. But Christianity, and more specifically, evangelical fundamental Christianity, is still probably, I think, over 50% of Americans. I believe was the last number. I mean, it was close to 50%, if not over. And that's fundamental evangelicals. I think it's almost 70% of America identify as actual Christian.
Yeah, I'll stand with Nakasuchi when I say that I have better conversation with more open-minded people, and some of them say, "Oh, Richard's an atheist pretending to be a Christian," and then the other side of the crowd has a tendency to say, well, "Richard's a Christian who pretends he used to be an atheist." But the truth of the matter is, I'm not at either one of these extremes, but I have better conversations with people who proclaim themselves agnostic or atheistic or even anti-theistic than I do regularly with Christians, to the point that Christians will say ridiculous things to me and hang up on me and run away when I talk about their text. So yeah, the open-mindedness at least is evident in the atheistic and skeptical community and the agnostic community, the nuns, much more than the Christian community. So I will stand right beside you and say that.
And I'm not trying to say like the atheist community doesn't have its toxic elements. I've spoken about it on this channel. Call some shit for speaking about it on this channel, but it definitely does. One of my friends, Callan, gets trolled all the time by atheists. And it's
I've started getting some of that flack too. Like I've gotten hate mail on my Twitter. Like people will follow me and shit, and I'll follow back out of niceness, and then I'll just get like fucking screeds about, oh, you're influencing Naka, you're gonna convert him, you're blah 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 blah, or shitting all over my gods. Like people make fun of my gods all the freaking time,
I know,
and I'm just like, first off, I don't give a shit what you say about them.
And we hardly ever talk about your gods.
Why do you care what I believe?
I've been thinking about having like a conversation where I grill you about your gods, just because like it never really comes up ever. Like we talk about all these conversations and you don't proselytize, you don't really put your shit out there. You're like, hey, I'm a pagan, deal with it.
Pretty much. I mean, like if I angle my camera up, like I've literally got shrines sitting next to me, like at all times, and nobody fucking notices them.
Yeah, I've got a shrine behind me. I got my camera turned off right now, but I've got every little Donald Trump thing that people sent me displayed too far away for the camera to really pick it up for you to see it. I will one of these days fix my background, but I'm not too worried about that shit. I should be, but I ain't. But no, like this conversation, it's so interesting to me because I think it goes back to the reprobate conversation a little bit. Like if you're raised your whole life to think that people are just evil, like, and that's the definition of atheism. It's why I embrace it, and I think that's one of the major movements, at least this segment of the skeptic community, the atheist community, that's really more on the left side of the political sphere. I would say is our emphasis and our difference is that we are focused on equality for all, and as much as I rage against Christianity, I want to make it damn clear that I don't want to take it away. Like I think I've made videos in the past talking about a pipe dream of a world without religion. But in those same videos, I can guarantee you every single time I said it would be a very boring world for me. Because 90% of my content, of what I love to do here on this channel, is talk shit about Christians.
Well, and you need your First Amendment rights to do that. But let's open up the floor to Mr. Parker a little bit, because we've been all carrying the conversation again.
I've been just like this. I've been itching to have this conversation all day because I watched those videos earlier.
So, I was looking at some polls and research by Pew Research, and I found an interesting one about people who go to church or religious services, and about 45% do not know that their congregation is either Democrat or Republican, and about a quarter of them say that they're a mix of both, which is it's kind of surprising, I guess, that they don't entirely know their political scheme at their church.
Well, I mean, being a, quote, mix of both Democrat and Republican, like, the U.S. is weird in that we've got a political binary here, right? Like, in a number of countries that are parliamentary in particular, like, there's a party for you if you say want gun rights, but also believe that LGBTQ people should be, like, married. Whereas out here, there's some people that are kind of, a mix of beliefs, but really there's this rigid binary where you're like, you're either progressive or you're not. You're either, like, want hardcore evangelical Christian fucking Sharia law, or you want, everybody to be free and running around and, sniffing roses and that sort of thing. And obviously that's an extremist straw man from either side. But the point is that that's our perception of each other, whereas like most people don't fit rigidly in those binaries.
I think that's a straw man of one side. That would be a straw man of the left. They try to say that when Democratic presidents are in office, that they put these extreme far left judges onto the benches. It's not true. They put moderate judges onto the benches. What is happening and what we see, especially now in the Trump administration, is an excess of extremism. And Trump and his people are surrounding themselves with far-right Christian Republicans, putting them into lifelong posts on in the federal courts. I mean, Trump it's the least talked about story in politics about how many judges that this Republican Congress has just passed through, extreme fundamental Christian judges. I mean, when I talk about, it's possible for Christian law to be reinstated into this country, Trump is trying to do that right now because he's pandering to the evangelical base. It's his only way to be reelected, his only way. And he is flooding this country with extreme right that we are going to be dealing with. It's going to take us 20, 30 years to replace the damage that's being done right now.
See, I say it's the end of the world, and people go, nuh-uh, but then you say something like that,
I went and took over the conversation again. I'm sorry.
Jeez, knock. You're just, like, chomping at the bit. I'm going to meet you.
I am. I even researched today. Like, I'm going to be better prepared for these shows, I promise, because, like, I just... When you do the research, it is atrocious. Like, and that's something that I've wanted to talk about for a while is these judges, because there is an assault on abortion. And I don't think we've ever actually talked where you fall on that, and I don't want to even start talking about that, Richard, because that's a whole nother conversation. But there's an assault on abortion. There's an assault on the Supreme Court just started writing defenses for companies that discriminate against gay people. They're kicking transgenders out of the military. I mean, just an outright far-right Christian assault in our government. A takeover. It's really sad. People, especially atheists, really need to talk about that element more.
Yeah, like there's a lot of like discrimination against a lot of groups in our nation that we don't really talk about, which is very sad and depressing.
All right, since Will dropped out, by the way, Conkrite has requested to come on. Tioga's working on trying to come on, which, I don't know whether, like, once they're through the Discord and all that stuff, we'll be able to do that. But I just sent Conkrite a link, and Shay has a link in her inbox for when she gets home.
Cool. Go ahead, Mr. Parker. I think you got cut off.
Yeah, I was just talking about how sad America is with the discrimination and how we are setting up our political system to do this because of Republicans and judges and many other things. I think Trump last month, he said something about putting God back into school, or I think in public prayer, and everyone's like, we already have that. That's legal. And no one's like, this didn't do anything, but this is showing that he really does care about his religious beliefs and getting his base back and trying to boost that up.
Well, I mean, like, I don't want to get too deep into Trump because that's not what we're talking about, but like the fundies are most of his base, right? So he needs to use them in order to get his political aims.
Yeah, well, and I was just using it as an example that now that the religious right does have power, we see what they're doing with it. They are definitely coming after people's rights. So, but they're so afraid that we would do that. Yet when they have power, that's exactly the first thing that they do. And I think that's the most interesting thing about this conversation is, they like to point to Mao and to Stalin when you talk about atheist communities, or if you try to talk about socialism in the political realm nowadays, they automatically point that finger at Venezuela instead of looking at the Nordic countries, for instance, instead of looking at successful socialist countries. So it's just this narrative, and they're really good. And if Dragnot was in the chat, he'd be screaming at me about using that word, but it is truly a narrative that the right does seem to be far better than the left. And that example is that if we did get power, like say Bernie Sanders, which is the far left, I think he's an atheist. I know he claims that he still believes in this Jew shit, but I think he's an atheist. He'll never admit it. But like say he got full power, they're worried we're coming after your healthcare, not your rights, right? Like we're not coming after your rights. So, but it's an unfounded fear. Most of us don't want that. We just don't.
Yeah, we just don't want to be governed by religious laws. And I think that that's a distinct difference. Like, again, we don't talk about my theism all that much, but like, since it applies here, like as a theist, I want the right to practice my own religion. Like, one of the reasons I ally with atheists is they want me to have the right to practice my own religion, too. They just don't want me to throw it at them.
But, Christians don't want you to be able to practice your religion. If they had their way, they'd probably outlaw it. And they definitely wouldn't want you to practice your relationship.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like, I'm polyamorous in addition to being polytheist. I'm poly all the things. So like I have 2 partners currently that live with me. I used to have a third one who didn't, but we broke up because he had some issues. But like we have a harmonious relationship that under the Bible should not exist, especially because it's not my husband having 3 women. It's me having, 2 guys that I'm with, and they're also in a romantic relationship and not a sexual one. We'll get into that someday. Like if y'all want to do a Q&A where I talk about that shit, like I'm less open about my relationships than Cirrus usually is, but like we have a similar structure to kind of what Cirrus has. And like what goes on with us, like we have to fight against the fact that there is still Christian law enshrined in this, in this country where my husband and I get certain rights, but my other partner doesn't. Like I have to sign a shitload of paperwork for my other partner to even be allowed to see me when I'm in the hospital. And I was in and out of the hospital a lot 2 years ago, like, 2018 into 2019, like I was dealing with celiacs and a lot of the complications from untreated celiac because it took them so long to find it. So I had a lot of nutritional deficiencies that led to nerve damage and other things. And like, we had to fight every step of the way when I was conscious, because I ended up there a couple times because I got knocked out, for my other partner to be allowed to see me. Because even if my husband gave permission, even if I gave permission, there were still some rights that were not granted to people who were not considered family. And the institution of marriage was created in the US specifically under Christian law. Like, that is one of the aspects of Christianity that was enshrined in, in the US. And so we have to fight that sort of religious law in order to have any sort of relationship between us. Property rights are based off of marriage. Like, all of those things, that one man, one woman Protestant crap, that is one of the ways in which religion did sort of be instated to its core in the US.
Have you thought about adopting this partner?
Unfortunately, if we did that, he would not be allowed to file his own taxes or anything else. Claiming him as a dependent is complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, this country is definitely, influenced and it's yeah. I actually know people that have polyamorous relationships in real life, and they face a lot of the same similar issues here, and not just legally, but just in the community. It's
well, and I mean, for one thing,
the
people don't
pushback
understand
against
it.
them. Yeah. Well, I
and
think they
besides
automatically
that,
associate a lot of it with the bad horror stories you hear about the fundamentalist Mormon branch that has this strict patriarchy, and a lot of it's based on that. I know when I was so dead set against polygamous marriage, it was because of what I was researching in the Mormon church. And yeah, I think it's stigmatizations and the things that they face going out in public. I can't even imagine because I've never lived it.
Well, and, I want to correct Will here a little bit. For in my state in particular, it depends on your state partially, but in my state, there's a lot more benefits to marriage than just raising kids. There's property rights, there's death rights, like funerary rights. There's rights that have to do with health insurance. Like, my husband's health insurance will not let us put Dana on it. Because Dana is the ghost, for anybody who cares. That's the name he goes by. Because he's not a dependent and we're not married, so he can't go on there, but I can. So he actually has to purchase his insurance from the exchanges separately and has to file taxes and stuff separately. We can't file them as a household. It was a lot harder to get him on my bank account. To be able to share our house account, which we all have separate bank accounts as well, but we have a house account, and getting him on that was a pain in the ass because a lot of banks are not set up to have 3 or more owners of an account that is used for checking and things of that nature. When it comes to residential rights and such, most mortgages will only let you put 2 people on them, if that. All of those sorts of things, when you're in a long-term committed relationship, which we've been together for 6 years as of the end of this year, all of us. So, when you've been in a long-term committed relationship and that that's not going to change, that can become a major problem. And on top of it, on the subject of having children, if we have kids, short of a paternal test, which one of them would get parental rights, right? How do you raise a kid that way? And my ability to get fertility services might be compromised by the fact that I have multiple partners. My ability to adopt, because a lot of adoption agencies are run by Christian companies and Christian organizations, my ability to adopt might be compromised because they see me as living an alternative lifestyle, despite the fact that we're happy and stable.
Yeah. I mean, it's all in society, and it's they have such this, and I'm not sure if Concrete, what your religion is. Welcome to the show. But it's this persecution complex that they automatically feel everybody's coming after them. Even though they are the biggest demographic in the country, they have the most political power now than they've had in a very, very long time. It is even George W. Bush, who pandered to the evangelical right to win re-election, hasn't done it nowhere near the what's happening now.
So let's give Concrete a chance to introduce
let Concrete.
themselves.
But it's just the blatant hypocrisy, and it's scary. Just real quick, when Supreme Court.
I'm gonna knock. Knock.
Just real quick, because I was getting to my point. When the Supreme Court is writing defenses for business owners that are discriminating against gay people, Well, that can apply to us atheists because, they can then discriminate against atheists and just fire you for being a fucking atheist. If they find out, they see something on Facebook that even makes them suspect it. Like this is no longer going to be the free country and that we've grown accustomed to. It's really scary.
All right, so Knock, I'm gonna mute your butt if you interrupt again. Let's let Concrete introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm an atheist, but I think that's the point, though, isn't it? Where they say they're persecuted, they're using that to put fear in people to give themselves more rights. So the more you get the people to believe that you're being persecuted, they're like, oh, you're being persecuted. Give them more rights, give them more help. You know what I mean? Let them discriminate for being a Christian. We get to do it against, we don't like making cakes for gay people or anything like that. They're like, that's the point, though. They use the persecution to get the rights.
Well, I don't even think it's that. I think that it's this idea that because they were persecuted by the Romans for a while before Rome became Christian, there's this narrative in the Bible itself, even this victim complex of the world is against us because the world is of the flesh and we are separate. And this us versus them narrative feeds their cohesion as a group. And I think that that's really what it's about. I think it's this idea that feeling like they're persecuted gives them, license in their mind to do anything they can against the people that they believe are their oppressors.
And I think it makes them feel close to Christ, right? Because Christ was persecuted. It's in the religion to be persecuted because Christ himself was persecuted. And it's the scary thing because, people have oftentimes when I've spoken of this, when I speak of witch trials and how, people tend to think that it was so long ago, but no, it wasn't that long ago in this country where we were burning people because, we were accusing them of witchcraft. In Tanzania now, today, still, to this very day, they are burning people for witchcraft over in Tanzania. And
They still do it.
Yeah, it's still happening. And it would be so easy. I'm not saying that they're going to start burning us in the town square again, but it would be so easy. It's that old adage, they can come
y'all are going to be the
for
ones
this group,
burned.
that group. Sooner or later, they're going to come for you.
Yeah, they came for the, they came for the gays and I did not speak because I was not gay, blah, 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 that entire thing. And I think, again, like with Christians, it's much like the sort of, and I'm not saying this about every single Christian. Again, Richard, you're in the chat. There are other Christians that we've met. Jaco is another one that we've talked to. But this particular
he doesn't really have a hell
of
concept, so he doesn't judge too much from what I've been able to tell from him.
This particular type of Christian, though, it's much like the sort of conditioning that you get in the military, right? When you dehumanize your enemy, when you make them other to the point where you no longer recognize them as human, when you see that this is a holy war that has been, approved by your God and you have been chosen to fight it, which is, again, a lot more of that Calvinist rhetoric, right? Like Calvinism has infested every aspect of this culture. When you have been charged to do this, then anything you do is justified in that. Denying women abortions and forcing them to die on the childbed, well, it's all in the sacrifice in the name of God to stop those godless heathens from damning themselves. Murdering, raping, pillaging villages, okay, well, some of those people kill the Indian to save the man. Some of those people might convert, and that means you've saved a few souls. That's worth all the souls you're going to send straight to hell. It's those justifications, I think, that, that we're railing against a lot of the time. And we don't want them to have the right to hurt us, but we do want them to have a right to peacefully practice their religion. You know what I mean? But if practicing your religion means you have to hurt other people, then, is that us taking away your rights, or does your rights end? Does your right to your fist end at the tip of my nose?
The only ideology that I think that should be up for debate on whether it should be legal to do in a free democratic country like America is fascism, right? Like that's the death of freedom. And even then, when you're talking about freedom of speech, as a liberal person, I would have arguments against that. I'm so conflicted on that argument, even when it comes to Nazis, right? So when it comes to Christians and even fundamental extreme Christians, no, I don't want to take that away from you. I wouldn't want my right to stand nose to nose with you like I did with Matt, or like I do, like me and Ali did recently with Misha. I don't want to take that right away from us. Like, and I don't think that they quite understand that religious freedom isn't just your freedom to be a Christian, but it's your freedom not to be as well. They don't get that
Um,
part of it.
so something else I kind of thought about. So many Christians, I'm not saying all Christians, but some I feel like they feel oppressed when we're giving rights to other religions. Like let's say we legalize polyamorous religion and like give them like a lot of legal status. They feel slightly oppressed. Like they for some way somehow feel oppressed. For somehow another group getting equal rights, they feel oppressed somehow. Like when gay marriage became legalized, they felt attacked about it somehow, calling it attack to their religion.
Well, because they're no longer privileged. Like, and this is something, we're going to get into lefty politics, so apologies to any of the right wingers who get mad at me for talking about political theory. But majority groups, when minority groups become equal to them, often feel as though their rights are being stripped when they no longer have an advantage. And this is something that you often see when you're talking about, say, minority rights for Black people or Native Americans or other things. Like, whenever we get more headway, whenever we start to get legal representation for what belongs to us, they feel like there's a limited pie for rights. So they feel like they just got a piece of theirs taken away and given to somebody else, rather than that we're getting raised up to the same level that they are. They don't understand the difference between being the same and, having started on a lower level, so to speak, in terms of rights, and being raised up to that platform.
Yeah, that's
I saw
what I think.
I saw a video today where he lied through the whole thing, but he was talking about the coronavirus virus and how it's the angel of
Coronavirus.
death. Yeah, that it's the angel of death, and it's coming to sweep the world of non-Christians.
Yeah, that was the video Ocean was responding to.
I didn't see it from Ocean. I watched the original. And he says that China persecutes Christians, but it's actually recognized. It's a state religion there. It's actually recognized by the state, so they don't persecute them. They don't expect. The problem is when they stand on the pulpit and they preach, they don't expect their congregation to do any research, to look into it, to see if it's true or not true. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So
well, they are likened to a flock of sheep, and sheep follow.
Yeah, literally. And I think that's, they don't want us to have rights because we show the flock.
Yeah, and we show the truth of them, and this is something that I've observed a lot. Christians look for the right church, right? They look for the right preaching, the right, whatever fits their ideology.
Church shopping.
So if they go to a church and they sit there for 4 or 5 sermons, and this preacher says one thing. Well, no, not this church, not this preacher. This preacher ain't a man of God. So then they'll go on to the next one, and they'll find that church that fits perfectly with the ideology that they already had. So they're not even willing to bend themselves within the confines of their own religion, and I think that's probably why they take such offense to you, Richard. And Richard, you're doing really good work on your channel. I when I do get a chance to watch it, I try to get over there. Sometimes I'm just lurking, but you're talking to atheists, you're talking to Christians, and a lot of Christians probably see you in about the same light that they see me.
Well, to be fair, like you were saying that, Richard, you were saying at the beginning of the stream that you're kind of redefining like how you see yourself, like within the Christian sphere, right?
Not exactly sure what you meant by that. If you'd paraphrase for me.
I mean that you're kind of trying to consider what to call yourself, like as a religious practitioner of some kind.
I think I'm following the true Christianity where there's nothing of hatred or prejudice described, but it's actually talking about love and acceptance and bringing others up with the strength, whatever excess strength that you have. And I think it's not just a godly kind of thing to do and to look at life and people with, but actually what I think the text is describing.
It's easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven.
Yeah, that's
You should give away your stuff and help the people. Not that. I agree. That
Yeah,
that was always my turnoff from Christianity, was that they were
There's
unaccepting, and they didn't. It shows love, but they preached hate, and that was that's when I started looking into atheism. Like when I started learning about, I don't know. That's when I saw that when I read the Bible, I believe that God isn't real. But
Well, I mean, the vast majority of
That made me
atheists that
look.
I've talked to are like, I stopped being a Christian because I read the Bible.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying. It was after they were like all hatred, and the stuff they read is like, if they read the New Testament, there's like caring stuff in there. And then so I'm like, oh, it's got to be a lot of caring, and I did read the Bible starting at the beginning, and I'm like, wow.
There's a lot of sex and violence and death
Yeah,
and
right.
condemnation and hate and
not to get us back into politics again, but it kind of fits the point. Is that I think that's the saddest thing about the Trump presidency is.
oh my God, Doc.
You've seen a lot of good Christians that you thought were somewhat reasonable people, but they've almost all been sucked into this train to where they're very anti-immigration now. And you read the New Testament, you read the Good Samaritan, and what Concrete just said about the rich, and they're literally following a billionaire that's spoon-fed that coddles them with this anti-immigration rhetoric that goes against their religion, and they do it for judges, and it's really weird. It's really, really odd. I don't want to get us back into the politics, but like that's just the point that
You do want to get us back into the politics. Stop lying, Doc.
No,
You keep bringing it up because you're obsessed with the politics.
they're fucking.
Call me one day. We'll talk politics. I'm really in the
No.
Well,
politics.
we can have another stream at any time where we talk about politics. We're trying to talk a little bit about this, but in the relation to that, that's the power of indoctrination, bringing it back to religion, is that it is so important to think right. That extends into politics, right? Like, your church tells you how to vote, even though they're not supposed to. And that's where I think a lot of this happens, is you get these preachers that are in favor of Trump and the Republican policy, and they care more about the abortion and other pet Christian issues. They care more about that than their own safety and well-being as human beings, and the safety and well-being of other human beings.
Don't forget,
they care more about that kind of power over other people than they do their own rights and freedoms.
One of the first things that Trump and Pence did was fuck with the Johnson Act, and now preachers can pretty much demonize Democrats and preach for Trump straight from the pulpit, when before they just couldn't do that and keep their tax exempt status. So I mean, this country's been fundamentally changed. A whole segment of the country is being told by one of their main authority figures, which is their preacher, that the other side are evil, and it's very sad. Thankfully, we do have good Christians like Richard here and that Christian vlogger. I mean, a lot of good Christians that don't, and even a lot of the NIFB speak against Trump because they see the hypocrisy of it. They get it right, like Niffies. You get a point because you see the hypocrisy of it, and that's what I was trying to speak to. It's just this abject hypocrisy. Your Bible says, if you follow that New Testament, that you should at least consider giving away most of your shit, like Concrete was saying. You don't got to be as poor as me, but you don't need to be too well off. I mean, that was the whole point of it, right? Like, unless if you believe like I believe, like I think it was supposed to be a Jewish tradition.
Well,
could I speak to the eye of the needle real quick for Concrete? That is a structural shape, and they got the structural shape from the shape of an adult camel. Okay, and it's called the eye of the needle because it kind of looks like a hole in the needle, the eye. But it's literally a hole in the outside wall for camels to walk through, but not with a rider. No sword, nothing on the camel. That's the eye of the needle, just so you know.
Interesting.
I never heard that either. But most preachers in America wouldn't tell you that.
Well, it means it's difficult,
okay,
not impossible.
Well, it's not for a camel to walk through. They were they were for people to walk through, not for camels. Like, they were small openings for just travelers who were carrying things to walk through, whereas the gates were camels and other caravans could go through.
I think that
depends on where you research, I guess.
The base of it is like in the richest country in the world, the wealth, instead of making money on the backs of the people, you pay the people a reasonable amount of money. I always tell people that if salaries had stayed the same and jobs didn't go overseas, the populace would still be sleeping and they could do anything they wanted.
Hmm.
But
Oh yeah.
when salaries dropped, that's why people started going. The church has got a big influx at that point because people are poor. You know what I mean? And they it, they a lot of them turn to religion. And but if they had kept salaries and the jobs in America, people would still be sleeping. But instead, everybody's awake because you're suffering, and that's what happens when you're suffering. And I just think that if
Yeah.
they followed the Bible, people would, if they were Christians, like, a lot of the richest people are Christians. You would think they would like pay better or spread the wealth a little. I mean, they do give away money. Bloomberg spent $200 million on commercials in a month.
Hmm.
That would have every homeless person could have a place to live for 10 years on that.
Oh yeah,
Be fed
easily.
for 10 years. Be comfortable for 10 years. There would that would have funded food stamps for 25 years, 20 years in like Ohio, where I live. Um,
But I mean, like, even more so, like, again, we're not going to get too deep into politics because
no,
we've
not
got other
politics. I'm
streams where
saying
we
they're,
talk
they're
about that.
Christians, and they're that's. I'm not saying the
Yeah.
political part. I'm just saying
Well,
instead of
I think it
instead
was
of
what I was trying to point out too. Is it's just the hypocrisy of it. Yeah, you're told from the pulpit that you're supposed to at least care about the poor. You're supposed to at least have open arms for needy people, and then you have a conversation with them about caravans coming up from the south, and all of a sudden they want to have concentration camps. Like.
Well, and like actually, let's go a little deeper into the charity thing because the charity thing is interesting. Christian charity groups do give a ton of money to the poor worldwide, especially Catholics. But the problem is it comes with the tail rider, especially when you're getting any sort of like if you've ever been homeless and you've ever gotten any sort of services from a church, they come with the tail rider of Bible classes, conversion, like Bible readings, time spent at the church in service, things of that nature. You have to convert to get that stuff. They don't just give it to you. And that's the problem, is it's a manipulation tactic. It's not given freely the way that they say, though they think they're giving a service to you by forcing you into this. It's not freely given. It's given on condition. And that's
Yeah.
not a political thing. That's a religious thing.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure some churches do just give freely to everybody, and I'm sure there's good churches.
None of the
out
ones
there.
I've ever run into, but
no, what you're saying is absolutely true because there is this whole going back to the very first conversation we had tonight. When you demonize a group of people, godless people as being atheist, evil, reprobates, then yes, you feel it is your moral duty to convert them and use any means to do so. So if they're destitute, yeah, you're going to use that against them and try to convert them into your religion because you're saving their soul because, God, they're gonna go to hell. Hell is, I mean, I think if Christianity didn't have hell, it would be a completely different conversation because this hell concept is fundamentally dangerous. It leads you to not really caring. I mean, you're going to heaven, they're going to hell. It's very easy
you're
to
special.
Yeah, it's very easy to demonize people at that point. It's one of the easiest techniques, and it's why it's been used for so long.
Mr. Parker unmuted himself, it looks like. I want to let them talk.
Yeah. So about the homeless and the charity, I work with my family. I go do charity runs for my family to give food to the homeless in our capital or whatever. And one homeless man was very upset because like he started yelling at my dad about religion, like because I think the man was so annoyed with religion being part of charity. He's like, I don't need God. I don't care. God, if God's real, then he's the one who's putting me in this situation. And I felt that like charity is funded really by religion most times, and that tailcoat, the coding of come to our religion is part of that charity, and they're tired of that really.
Well, and I think the shining example really is the Salvation Army, because the Salvation Army will separate trans people from their partners quite often and house them in gender conditions. If they house them at all, they'll house them in the wrong gender for how they identify, and they will refuse gay and lesbian couples entirely, which is why I always urge people when it comes to Christmas time, and why Knock and I gave out that PSA: don't give to the Salvation Army. If you're going to give money to charity, go directly to food banks and stuff that are unaffiliated with churches and stuff, and give money directly to them, because they could buy food for cheap and help people. Yeah. But like the Salvation Army, everything that you donate to them goes to discrimination. Like, they might help people, but they help their people. Yeah, they don't help the whole population equally.
I worked for them about 10 years ago now, and they have drug halfway houses that we would bus people from those halfway houses, and they would work in our store, and we would pay them shit, like just nothing. And they'd be there all fucking day in the back doing the shit job of sorting all the fucking donations, and they wouldn't be making no fucking money. And it's all a racket. I mean, they got all these donations coming in, and they pay shit wages to these workers. Their managers were making like $9 an hour. I mean, it is absolutely insane.
I'll give this an 80% accuracy rating because my memory can't be perfect. I'm a human being. Salvation Army is a subsidiary of International Salvage, which is a Fortune 500 company, just FYI.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's someone making money at the top. I just think that in America especially, if they really subscribe to religion, that salaries would be high. I mean, naturally, salaries would be higher. Like, America makes enough money that everybody could live comfortably without giving it away. I know everybody's like, "Oh, you're giving it away." That's not even what I mean. I mean, I work 40 hours a week, but I only make $25,000 a year.
Like most people.
So if I got paid a little more money, I could live very comfortably. I wouldn't be able to go see a movie.
I agree wholeheartedly. Misha came in the last couple weeks, and he's talking about broken homes and how that's the worst problem in America. And I'm like, you want to know what's going to fix broken homes in America? Is if wages weren't stagnant and people actually made a decent wage to where they weren't arguing and bickering about which bill they were going to pay, or if they're going to get the generic brand or the name labeled brand or the organic food. If people had more freedom of income, then marriages wouldn't be strained to the point of divorce rates being astronomical. So if you really want to fix, the broken home situation, then maybe start looking at some more liberal ideas about raising taxes on corporations and giving people back some fucking money.
Well, my ex-wife.
So, I wanted to correct Richard really quick, because I went and looked it up. The Salvation Army is a Protestant church and international charitable organization. It's not a Fortune 500 company. It has a membership of over a million, and they give their clergy members military titles like soldiers, officers, etc. Yeah. But they're a church that also has a charitable organization subsidiary. So it's an actual church.
I'll let Richard respond, but I do think he's probably talking. I think they have some affiliates to where there's big money out there. It's a shady ass organization. I was only there for about a year, but I'll let Richard respond.
Can't remember where I read it because it's so darn long ago and I'm getting old, so I'm not claiming perfection, but I read, I'm pretty sure somewhere, that it was part of International Salvage, which is a huge conglomerate. Just gigantic.
I'll look into that. I've thought about going at Salvation Army a few times, especially since me and Ali talked about them.
Well, you guys make me feel comfortable and willing to go out on a limb sometimes around you guys. So
I do it all the time. Don't worry about it. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them, and I do think that there is big money out there that maybe they're funneling. I don't know. Shady organization, and you're right. It was a military structure. So we had sergeants, I think, would come in and really just shake down the fucking stores. If they didn't like this, you had to redo everything. I mean, it was not a democracy at all. They came in, they told you what the fuck to do, and you did it. And if you complained about all the drug addicts not getting no money, then you got fired.
So, another thing, I looked up the Salvation Army and I clicked on About Us or whatever, and their mission statement says, its mission is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and to meet human needs in his name without discrimination.
But that's not true. Like, there are so many reports about that.
Yeah.
But
Without discrimination, as long as you fit our qualification for what a human person is. Because they clearly exclude LGBTQ people with all of the massive number of reports of, that sort of discrimination. Even up here on the West Coast, I'm freely open about the fact that I live in the Seattle area. Like, even up here, Salvation Army shelters will screw over LGBTQ plus people. Like, that's fucked. That is not okay, and I would never, ever encourage anybody to give their money to an organization that, even in the most liberal fucking haven in the U.S., one of them will still shit on people who are the least fortunate among us. The most likely, LGBTQIA plus people are the most likely to end up homeless, to end up victims of violence, to be fired from their jobs, to be discriminated against right now, and they won't fucking help them. Screw you, Salvation Army. Screw you.
But
Yeah,
back
second
to Knox's point is, me and my ex-wife, we had 6 kids, and so daycare. Could you imagine the daycare bill? So I ended up having to work like 2 jobs or double shifts, just to keep up, and she couldn't work because couldn't pay the daycare bill, and that wore down our marriage to eventually where we got divorced. Just money. I mean, it was literally money.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people's problem. Like, Bernie, not to get political, Bernie's the only one that talks about it. Like, a good chunk of America, almost 50% of America doesn't have $500 in the bank. Like, that's a fucking problem. Shit, I don't have $500 in the bank. I'm getting old. I got legs that are failing me. Like, it's scary. It's scary to really, if you really think about it. Once you start getting to that age where you really have to think about it, and if you're not up there, life isn't so easy. And yeah, I think that's most of the problems with marriages is you just get so stressed out about daily decisions that you really shouldn't have to make.
Well, we always wanted to take the kids somewhere or go do stuff, you know what I mean? But we all ended up stuck in the house because we had no money. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
when you have that many people in a small confined space, tempers flare. I mean, yeah, there was good times, but it just the longer it went on, the worse it became.
So, I think I need to redirect us back closer to, away from politics and kind of back to what we were originally talking about, which is, atheists and Christians kind of denying each other rights and such. With the Salvation Army, you have this massive, massive Christian organization who actively, they choose to deny help to people that they identify as not living within their value structure. That is what we're talking about when we often say that Christians want to deny rights to the rest of us. They don't think that LGBTQIA plus people in general are worthy of help. And, when you see Christian politicians, like your hardcore evangelical politicians getting into power, some of the first things they do is start stripping rights from people that they don't agree with the way that they live their lives. So, when you talk about, say, atheists doing that, the most that an atheist is probably going to do is make fun of you. Right? They might challenge your beliefs. They might make fun of you for holding them, but they're not going to, most of us, most of polytheists, most of atheists, most of us that are not Christian are not going to want to strip away your ability to practice your faith.
No. I like being able to laugh about it.
It doesn't cross my mind to do it. It doesn't occur to me to take away the right to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
well, and
I have so much fun with it. Like, there's this little, I call her a little girl. She's 22, 23, but she's really, really young compared to me, right? So I call her a little girl, but I work with her, and she's a Christian, and she's a cool ass Christian. She's not a hateful bone in her body. So I like trolling her, and I have recently, because I've been making this Paul video, been trolling her about Paul, and I'm sure she fucking hates it, but she's really, really sweet and genuine, and I would never want to take away that Christianity from her. I've got Christians that follow me that agree with a lot of the things that I say. They don't agree with everything I say, but they agree with a lot of the things that I say. I wouldn't want to take their faith away from them because they can see it. You know, they can see what I'm saying. They don't have to agree with it, but they can see it. To where on the other side of that, they don't give them the chance to even listen to me. You know, most don't. I commend the Christians that do, because every single one that does, you know, to me it gives me hope. You know, that coexistence. I won't be allowed to see it, but one of these days, bro, like we'll get over the hate, and it'll just be you do your thing and I'll do mine, and we'll be good.
That's what scares me about the NIB, is that they're getting bigger. It's not like it's a shrinking thing.
Oh yeah, in this climate today, it's emboldened all across the board.
And they want to take away rights from everybody that doesn't think like they do. You know what I mean? Well, they want to kill the people that don't. I mean, literally, like, take everything from you. And I mean, that's, the fact that so many people are willing to follow that hatred and take away the life of somebody they disagree with is, to me, that's part of what's, you know, what's that's not what America is. America is supposed to be the land of the free. We're the mixing pot. We're the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Using religion to take that away, because, you know, they say the Constitution's based on God, so on and so forth. So if that's based on God, it's not. But that the rest of the Bible should hold sway over our lives, so on and so forth. And that scares the hell out of me, that they're going to take away. You know, if they keep growing, that they'll slowly try to take power. I saw somewhere where they're trying to take over the government so they could take back their to make Christianity the state religion, or the country's religion, taking away our rights. You know what I mean? And even here in Ohio, I don't tell people I'm an atheist.
Ali, mute your mic.
Sorry, I thought I had.
Either they preach at me, or they scream at me, yell at me, tell me I'm going to burn in hell. And if I speak up, they tell me that God's going to strike me down because I spoke up. You know what I mean?
And I've gotten shit like that for being a polytheist. Now, granted, I live in a much more liberal area, but I've gotten shit from parts of my family about, you know, being polytheist and how I'm going to go to hell. And I've gotten a lot of shit on the internet for it, from atheists and Christians alike.
I first started getting my shit when I was Taoist / Buddhist. You know, we need to send him to Christian camp. Like I had an aunt that wanted to send me to a fucking Christian camp for a year because I had, you know, converted to Buddhism, and I'm like, now, like, she just won't speak to me. You know, we're not on speaking terms anymore.
That's the thing. You know, as a theist, I do feel compelled to speak to you, Concrete, and say something that's really important in my heart. Thanks for your dad work, bro.
Thank you.
That's a big deal. It's a lot of sacrifice.
I spend a lot of time with my kids, so.
Good for you. Good for them.
So far, I have a grandbaby now, because my one daughter's 25, so.
I hope I'm around for that stage.
I always felt that, you know, even me and my ex-wife don't fight in front of the kids, and we're like best friends now, even though I always say she replaced me with a younger version of me. But I taught my kids, let my kids choose their religion as they were growing up. So I never like pushed anything on them. But like I said, here in Ohio, actually in the school, they try to teach creationism, and basically they're trying to indoctrinate them, which frustrates me because I don't believe in that. But that goes back to taking away the rights. If you indoctrinate the kids before they know any better, you're basically taking away. You're starting to take away the rights of people at that point.
I saw something.
Well, and I don't think that we should ban people from teaching their kids about religion either. Like, if I have kids, I plan on teaching, you know, my kids about my religion. I plan on practicing it with them, but I'm also going to teach them that they have a choice, and I'm going to encourage them to explore other religions when they're older and can understand the concepts behind them. You know, when they're not so young and impressionable that, like, Christians are going to be like, you're going to go to hell if you keep doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it's okay to teach kids about faith as long as you're not telling them that it's the only way.
But
Well,
you're going to teach them about faith,
yeah.
not the school, right?
Or
Yeah, I would never ask. I would never want a school to
or
teach people
this.
about
I
my
saw
faith.
something terrifying on Scholar Fiction, and I'm not like I was just kind of listening as I was cleaning earlier, and then this kind of brought me, and I kind of looked, and I'm not sure if anybody really picked up on it at the time, but he had Pastor John, this young youth pastor, on his channel, and this guy, he's probably 20s, I would say, maybe not even early 20s, mid 20s, and he said he has a TikTok channel. And that just scared the fuck out of me. My daughter's 10 years old, and my daughter actually believes in God. I've let her, make her, she believes what she believes. I don't push nothing. I'm the same way as Concrete. But I don't want my daughter being indoctrinated by a 25-year-old youth pastor on TikTok. Like I have a huge problem with that, and that's really stuck out to me. When I was listening to that earlier as I was cleaning, and I was like, fuck, TikTok now. Like, I really got to worry. Like, I was worried about the little fuck boys and their fucking duck face. And now I got to worry about evangelical fundamentals trying to proselytize to my daughter on TikTok.
Is TikTok mostly kids?
Yeah, I think. I hope.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's
TikTok is
wrong.
mostly kids. There are some.
That's wrong.
There are some like creepy adults that hang out on TikTok, but it is mostly kids.
Yeah, watch those apps.
Yeah, there's
What they found that China or one of those was mining data through them. Maybe it was India was mining data through. I don't know if it was TikTok or the other one that's just like it. But just be careful.
Yeah, like I don't even really like her being on it, but at this point, if I try to take it away from her, it'd be World War III up in the Nakasuchi household.
Oh no, yeah, I understand. But I don't know if it was, like I said, I don't know if it was TikTok. There's another one that's just like it, but they were using it to like spy on people. It was
the whole
nuts.
thing's kind of creepy to me. Like the whole thing. Like I watch what's his name? Shit. Let me see if I can find him. I'm not gonna be able to. Cody Co. I don't know if anybody. Let me get back there. I don't know if anybody knows Cody Co. But he's a pretty big YouTube channel, and he's funny as fuck. I find him to be funny, and he did a little series on e-boys on TikTok, and that shit was hilarious, making fun of their little facial expressions.
Knock, you done fucked up your stream.
Yeah, no, yeah, I did it briefly, trying to find something, but yeah. So I just find it like I'm really disturbed by TikTok to begin with, right? And then I have this fucking youth pastor talking about using TikTok, and I'm like, whoa, no, this is a whole new level of thing I need to consider. Like I've been considering this shit all day.
Well, and like I wanted to give a quick warning, Knock. I'm probably gonna have to jet within like the next 15 minutes or so because I need to get dinner in and like
we can start
get
closing
going.
it out. Like we've been going for about 2 hours now.
Because like my back is killing me. My alarm almost went off. I caught it before it did, but like I need to do another round of exercises and I gotta get dinner in. We normally don't stream past 8 o'clock my time, so I'm actually surprised we went this long. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, it's been really fun. I enjoy these open rooms, and I'm glad we're getting back to doing them. Maybe Shay next time you'll get in here, and Will maybe next time won't have technical issues. Great having you on, Concrete. Come back on next time and be on longer.
No problem. Like I said, if you ever want to talk politics,
We do political streams around once a month.
We'll get you onto a political stream.
Warning, you're talking to a communist, but like not what you probably think communism is or what a lot of people do.
Honestly, communism, it's not that communism doesn't work, it's the way it's been implemented. It didn't work, right?
Preach.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree wholeheartedly. Me and Alex talked about it. I don't think that there's been a true communist country ever on this planet.
Not a state. No, there have been communist organized cultures, but there have not been.
Not a
there's
government.
not been a state that we would recognize that way.
Communist Russia wasn't communist Russia. They were dictatorship Russia. There's a difference.
They were Marxist-Leninist, Stalinist.
But that's another stream. Ali, you don't talk about it too much.
That is the bread pill. That's the bread pill stream. Like me and Pig got to go at you back before he rebranded to Xanderhall.
I'm a bit more socialist now, definitely. I've been leaning farther socialist. But I don't like really admitting that as a Bernie Sanders supporter because people use that against Bernie Sanders, and he's not a socialist. I'm not a socialist. I lean pretty close now, I think, though.
You're a mixed economist. That's what, you're a mix.
Yeah, I mean, I'm, shit. I fucking really enjoy Vosh right now. Like, I listen to Vosh a lot when I'm cleaning now. So, yeah, definitely getting into some political commentary again.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do another commie stream. Like we're gonna have to do another one of those commie education.
I
type
know
streams.
Vosh is busy, but I would like to I would like to ask him some questions.
I'll see if I can talk to him because we're supposed to have lunch sometime this month or next month. So
maybe it'll happen, chat. Maybe it'll happen. But I want to thank again, Richard. Every time you come on, I want to have a one on two with you, me and Ali. Maybe after we finish off Misha on Sunday, we can book you on a Sunday and have another one-on-one and delve into your beliefs, because we've only had a couple of them, and I always say that you just got to take more and more time to understand Richard Madsen.
I'm at your disposal, sir.
Yeah, I always love having you on, and Mr. Parker, it's been a long time. I'm glad that you came back on.
all right, well, thank you guys so much for coming. Do we have any more words on reprobate, like the definition of reprobate and the way that it's used, or on the stripping of rights or granting of them, or anything else that you guys would like to say in conclusion? I'll go from left to right because on StreamYard it's all the same. So we'll start with Richard.
I love that. On StreamYard, it's all the same. Yeah, as far as reprobate from the text is concerned, in an overview that works all together, it's only talking about end times, which is why you can say ridiculous things like give away all your crap, ignore your parents, and walk away from your kids, and just follow me, and that's actually moral. And that's the only time it could be moral. Other than that, it's irresponsible, it's bad for society, it's bad for family, it's bad. So that's actually talking about a very, very specific time frame after the main ascension. The laggers who are kind of hanging out, waiting to see what happens. That's for them. As far as what was the other?
Religious rights and whether or not people who are not Christians should have them.
Yeah, keep religious people out of office because they want to take your rights. They
damn! That's coming out with us. That's coming out swinging, Richard. That's pretty strong words.
They want to take your rights away because they think they're righteous, but they're self-righteous. They're not in agreement with their own text. Please keep them from doing that. Wham!
Yeah, I like it. I like it. That's pretty much what I'm going to say.
All right, Mr. Parker.
Yeah, reprobate's not really a good label, especially in extreme groups, so we should be very cautious on using that. And the definition is whatever the religious group is using, but we should be up to date on what they're using it for. Religious freedom, and just don't take people's religious freedom away. Just don't. It's not nice. I'm trying to be nice here. It's a free nation.
And religious freedom is not the freedom to discriminate against people you don't like. It's the freedom to practice your own religion in your own goddamn home.
Yes.
Or in your church, or, if you want to have a rally, all those things that, they were saying that they were afraid we'd take away from them.
All right, Concrete, your turn.
I think they use reprobate for anything. I think that they would, if they feel inclined towards it, or I just did use reprobate to down everybody that doesn't match their whatever's in their head at the time, or stuff that makes them feel guilty. Like if they did it, they'd feel guilty about it. And I think they still use that term for people like that, right? And I agree with Richard that you don't put religious people in office. In Texas, they actually before churches could preach, about who to vote for, they were pushing candidates to get religious people into Texas, and you see how Texas is. I mean, so they were quietly trying to take away your rights 20 years ago when they started doing it with Bush and them.
They've been not so quietly trying to take away your rights for a lot longer than that.
Not so quietly, yeah, but then it was quietly because it was the senior George Bush is when they started.
All right, so I have
the junior one really started bringing it out into the open.
Yeah.
I've got one more question for all of our people, and Knock and I'll answer it at the end before we give our sign off. My question, and again, we're going to start with Richard. What is your definition of reprobate after our conversation, and do you identify as one?
Oh gosh, I sure am flawed. I know that, and I know I don't know all things. So I'm probably, to some extent, yes, I qualify. What's my definition of it? I think my definition of it, I try to adhere as closely to the text as I possibly can, is that someone who in the second half of end times with heaven over their heads can't accept it. That's my definition.
All right. Mr. Parker, what is your definition of reprobate after this conversation, and do you identify as one?
I'm sure I'm a reprobate or whatever, whatever you want to call me. The definition, I guess, for me, I'm not that biblical about it. I just say whatever the religious fundies say it is.
Yeah, which fundies, though? Are you talking about the Calvinists, or are you talking about the NIFBs? Because, like, you're going to get into a fight if you're saying it's what the fundies say. Which fundies?
That's true. Someone who's, for some reason, very sinful, and fundies of both groups don't like you, so they call you reprobate. That's it.
I like the term NIFB. That's a good one. To me, I definitely fit reprobate, because I believe that humans are animals, so we naturally lean towards multiple partners, even if we don't realize it. Like, a lot of people are like, I have my work husband or my work wife or my game husband. You know what I mean? And I just think that's a natural state for us. So that would make me a reprobate, just there. But my definition is anything that doesn't fit the narrow definition of what's biblical. So technically everybody's a reprobate, because you can't live up to the Bible's definition of holy.
The Bible can't even live up to the Bible's definition of holy. Exactly. It can't decide what it wants from you.
So, like I said, my definition is anything that doesn't fit that narrow scope.
I mean, like, let's just go ahead and piss off all of the Christians in the chat. So is it faith or works, guys? Like, just saying, like, the Bible can't even agree on what salvation is. Like,
don't worry. I'll make sure to really piss off all the Christians as I'm signing out. So,
all right. So, my definition, I think honestly that the reprobate mind, the idea of like, oh, you're denying God, you don't go to church, you don't give a shit about what God wants. I'm in this weird category where I acknowledge the Christian God probably exists. I think he's an asshole, as you guys often hear me say on stream. So I don't give a fuck what he wants from me. I think he's real. I don't think he created everything. I think that he's a jerk who's extremely prideful, who, like, if everything written about him is true, at the very least about the things he supposedly did or wanted from people, it's pretty fucked up. The Christian version of that God. So I'm kind of in the middle where I don't deny his existence. Like, I think that he's probably a small, angry desert war god that, a particular group of people worshipped that contacted them, and a bunch of other people decided to claim that they could worship him too, and that's probably a problem. But, like, I think personally that I would probably fit the NIFB's definition of reprobate, and I would probably fit the Calvinist definition of reprobate, because there ain't no fucking way that I'm going back to worshiping the Christian God. Like, screw that guy. He doesn't deserve it. But in terms of the, the other definition of reprobate, like the scoundrel and all that, I mean, come on, guys. You know how nice I am. At least until you piss me off.
I'm the scoundrel.
I'm the nice person on Naka's shoulder until you piss me off. Like, if you manage to piss me the fuck off, if you get me to see red the way that Misha Popoff did, like, you done something wrong, bro.
Yeah, that guy.
I'm the nice one. I'm the co-host that makes sure that Nak doesn't pop off on people.
Yeah, his one comment for our last stream was, I didn't get angry. And I'm like, I don't think we said he got angry. We didn't say he got angry. We got angry. I don't think we said he got angry.
We got so fucking mad. Like, I lost my shit. I almost ended up British midstream. Like, people started hearing my accent come out because I was like, I'm gonna fucking fuck you up.
All right, so it's 11:10. I have not fixed my Patreon screen yet. I'm terribly behind on that. Now Will's going to try to come in, you bastard.
Yeah, I know. It finally works. Yay!
Just in time to say goodbye.
Yeah, just in time to say goodbye.
Yep.
So now that you've heard our conversation, you've been in the chat the whole time. What is your definition of reprobate, and do you define yourself as one, Will?
Yeah, I'm definitely a reprobate. I mean, I'm a Jew, so I don't fit in the Christian. But I don't know if I would go as far as to say no religious people in office. You could put your religious shit in a box and then put that box outside of the place that you work in government. That would be good. Just take all your shit, put it in a shit box, put it outside, take it to the
Put the
shit
box
store.
in another box. Put a box in another box and let that box be rained on outside while you do your voting.
Well, there's a different kind of religious person. I think maybe Richard was referring to fundamentalists with a religious political agenda, as opposed to religious folks that have a political agenda.
Stop voting for fundies, guys.
Stop voting against your
I've done plenty of stories on movements, particular movements of the Christian Church, Quiverful movement that are raising huge families to be children of Christ and to infiltrate government and police forces.
The Quiverful movement, let your semen be a quiverful of errands.
Bill Gothard was doing that 40 years ago, so that's been going on for at least 40 years. Steven Anderson at one point was directly affiliated with Bill Gothard and still preaches a quiverful doctrine to his NIFB movement. So that being said, I'll get to my closing because I really want to piss off the Christians, and hopefully I don't piss you off, Richard. I don't think you will. I think you might find this very humorous. That's what I was going to clarify when it comes to voting. Atheist, I'm speaking to you. I've never understood atheists that vote hardline Republican. There is a choice. You don't have to vote for a liberal if you don't want to, but there is a very real thing happening with this administration that I did try lay out with the judges and the extreme far right judges attacking equal rights. So when it comes to that issue, I would just say vote your conscience or don't vote, please. You can. Right now is not the time to vote religiously because some dangerous shit is happening. So atheists, please don't add to their numbers because the far right religious people are going to really come out in 2020. We don't need to add to that. But
every vote that you don't cast doubles the vote of a fundy, guys.
Yeah. So when it comes to the reprobate thing, I embrace being a reprobate. I've been called it from several different segments of Christianity. I am so proud that Digital Hammurabi, designed my 100% reprobate shirt. We will get that back on the store for you guys. But I think that if there is a heaven, that reprobates will go. And I also think Christians and Muslims will go, and I think everybody's going to go, because I think that if there is a Christian God, and the thing that's going to be responsible for sin is going to be cast into hell. Well, when all's said and done, God is going to be cast into hell, and everybody's going to be able to go to heaven. Going to shout out my boy Ocean as we close out. Thank you guys so much. Be the conversation.
Goodbye.
Okay, bye. What do you think of using logic and stuff? What are you talking about?
We're still technically live, John.
Yeah, but I mean, we can always talk through the outro. It's fun to talk.
Oh, it's cutting in and out now. I'm literally having
off, so they can hear us chatter as we close out. I'll leave it going for a few minutes. So we'll be live for a few minutes.
Looks like Will has a tinfoil hat on.
So is anybody? Yeah, well, he swapped it out for the MAGA hat because everybody was like bitching him out for the MAGA hat.
I know. I had to listen. Shay wanted me to come on and scream really loud, but I was like, nah, I don't think I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, I thought about it.
I was like, I don't want to get banned for another 1,000 years.
You're still on probation. Like I let you change your nickname back, but like you're still on probation.
I know. This is great. I can hear like every other word.
All right, so I'm gonna